All right, so we are on page 651. Put on my glasses here so I can read it. On 651, and he is talking right now with various devotees, and Ramakrishna is talking right now, and he's been going on for quite some time here. And he says today, there's another big man, Captain. Though a man of the world, he is a great lover of God. Talk to him sometime. He knows the Vedas and the Vedanta, the Bhagavata and the Gita, the Adhyatma Ramayana, and other scriptures by heart. You will find out when you talk to him. He has great piety. Once I was going along a street in Baranagar, and he held an umbrella over my head. He invites me to his house and shows me great attention. He fans me, massages my feet, and feeds me with various dishes. Once at his house, I went into samadhi in the toilet, and he took care of me as though he is so particular, even though he is so particular about his orthodox habits. He didn't show any abhorrence for the place. He has many expenses. He supports his brothers who live in Benares. His wife is a miserly woman at first. Now she is burdened by the expenses of the family, that she cannot spend all the money that she would like to. Captain's wife said to me, he doesn't enjoy worldly life. That is why he once said that he would renounce the world. True, every now and then he expressed that desire. Captain was born in a family of devotees. His father was a soldier. I have heard that on the battlefield he would worship Shiva with one hand and hold a naked sword in the other. Captain is a strong upholder of orthodox conventions. Because of my visiting Keshab Chandra Sen, he stopped coming here for a month. He said to me that Keshab had violated the social conventions. He dined with the English, had married his daughter into another caste, had lost his own caste. I said to Captain, what do I care for such things? Keshab chants the name of God, so I go to him to hear about God. I eat only the plum. What can I do about the thorns? But Captain remained stubborn. He said to me, why do you seek Keshab? I answered him rather sharply, but I don't go to him for money. I go to him to hear the name of God. And how is it that you visit the Viceroy's house? He's a Malecha. How can you be in his company? That silenced him a little. But he is a great devotee. When he worships, he performs arati with camphor. When he recites hymns, he becomes a totally different person. He becomes absorbed. So I love how the master here oh, here comes a nearie. How the master here is talking about this man, the captain, and c- discusses him as a worldly person. You know, he's wealthy, he works, he's got children, he's got a wife, all of these things, and yet he says, even though he's a worldly man, that he has great piety and that he's a great lover of God. So these things are not exclusive. You know, it's not an either or where you can't be both or have both. And so I like this idea and the fact that he is very different from the master, has a very different tradition that he's doing here, right? And while most orthodoxy folks, for those of us, who are concerned about those things, get all worked up over them, we see that the spiritual person in the room is not all worked up over them, is not concerned about them. And so I like how he defends him. And then he uses the situation to talk to Mahendra here, or Mahimatran, showing him that you're being a hypocrite because you won't hang out with him because he has spiritual differences from you, but you're totally willing to hang out with worldly people who have nothing in common with you, right? And so he's drawing and showing the hypocrisy of the situation. And in our time today, it's really important to see the hypocrisy is the destroyer of religion, right? Destroyer of spiritual life. It completely removes your ability to hear the divine, right? It completely cripples you in able to for staying true to vows, right? So this hypocrisy has to really go, and so the master's seeing it here, and it's only a handful of times where Ramakrishna actually feels inspired to be sharp with somebody, to be very direct with them. And so here we see it here, as he's talking to his friend here, to Mahimashran. In the light of Vedantic reasoning, the world is illusory, unreal as a dream. The Supreme Soul is the witness of the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. These things are in your line of thought. The waking state is only as real as the dream. Let me tell you a story that agrees with your attitude. There it is from Ramakrishna's mouth. Also, we read this in I Am That, and now we have it being repeated that the waking state is only as real as the dream state. And so, if you remember, so that Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj refers to the waking state as the waking dream state. He doesn't just call it the waking state. And so, and we've talked about why that is, right? Because we form symbols for the information that the brain gets from the senses, and those symbols in our mind are what we observe, what we see. We don't actually see the external world, right? We see symbols of the external world created by our mind using our mind's eye, because the light from the world stops at the back of our eye. So it doesn't actually get handed, the actual image doesn't actually go to the brain. And neurochemical information describing the results of the eye gets sent to the brain, and from that information, the mind then creates its symbol for it, right? So let me tell you a story that agrees with your attitude. There was a farmer who lived in the countryside. He was a real gyani, a real knower of God. He earned his living by farming. He was married, and after many years, a son was born to him who he named Haru. The parents loved the boy dearly. This was natural, since he was one precious gem in the family. On account of his religious nature, the farmer was loved by the villagers. One day he was working in the field when a neighbor came to him and told him that Haru had had an attack of cholera. The farmer at once returned home and arranged the treatment for the boy, but Haru died. The other members of the family were grief-stricken, but the farmer acted as if nothing had happened. He consoled his family and told them that grieving was futile. Then he went back to his field. On returning home, he found his wife weeping even more bitterly. Right? She said to him, "How heartless you are! You haven't shed one tear for our child." The farmer replied quietly, "Shall I tell you why I have not wept? I had a very vivid dream last night. I dreamt that I became a king. I was the father of 8 sons and was very happy with them. Then I woke up. Now I am greatly perplexed. Should I weep for those 8 sons or for this one son, Haru?" The farmer was a Gyani. Therefore, he realized that the waking state is as unreal as the dream state. There is only one eternal substance, and that is the Atman. But for my part, I accept everything. Turiya and also the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. I accept all the states. I accept them all, Brahman and also Maya, the universe and its living beings. If I accepted less, I should not get the full weight. A devotee, the full weight? How is that? Everyone laughs. The master, Brahman is qualified by the universe and its living beings. At the beginning, while following the method of not this, one has to eliminate the universe and its living beings. But as long as I consciousness remains, one cannot but feel that it is God Himself who has become everything. He alone has become the 24 cosmic principles. When a man speaks of the essential part of the bell fruit, he means its flesh only, and not the seeds and the shell. But if he wants to speak of the total weight of the fruit, it will not do for him to weigh only the flesh. He must accept the whole thing, seeds and shell and flesh. Seeds and shell and flesh belong to one and the same fruit. The nitya, the absolute, right, and the lila, the changing, the non-repeating flow of change in this world, the lila, belong to the same reality. So what he's saying there, he's saying that these two sides, the absolute unchanging, God, the unchanging, and the world of change are one, that there is a place of transcendence from which they are seen to be singular. And so initially we have to say not this, right? We have to separate ourselves out from the world and separate ourselves out from mind, right? And stop with the cognition. So initially we have to do that in order to realize who we are. But once we come to the knowledge of who we are, everything can be added back, right? Nothing is excluded. Everything is the divine. Everything is the one without a second. So Ramakrishna is saying that he accepts all of them, the relative as well as the absolute. I don't explain away the world as Maya. What I do, where were I to do that, I should get short weight. Mahimacharan. It is a good synthesis from the absolute to the relative and from the relative to the absolute. Master. The Gyanis regard everything as illusory, like a dream, but the Bhaktas accept all the states. The milk flows only in driblets from the Gyani. Everyone laughs. There are some cows that pick and choose their fodder, hence their milk flows only in driblets. But cows that don't discriminate so much and eat whatever they get give milk in torrents. The superior devotee of God accepts both the absolute and the relative. Therefore, he is able to enjoy the divine even when his mind comes down from the absolute. Such a devotee is like the cows that give milk in torrents. Everyone laughs. Mahimacharan. But the milk of the cow that eats without discrimination smells a little. Laughter. The master with a smile. Oh, that's true, no doubt. Therefore, that milk should be boiled. One should boil such milk over the fire a little while. There will be no smell whatsoever if you boil the milk over the fire of knowledge. Right? And so he's saying here that all of these, everything, he accepts everything. And, I'd like to posit the possibility of when you see everything as divine, when you see that everything is spirit, everything is consciousness, that you begin to understand that everything is spiritual, right? And it's through that knowing and through that contemplation and through following that line of thought that you understand that this moment becomes everything. That this moment that we're in at here and now, right, is God, right? The I am. That's what it means by the isness. So God is this moment. This moment is scripture, right? Because it contains Satchit Ananda, right? And Satchitananda is what indicates your karma. When you go against it, you create karma. When you see yourself as separate from it, you create karma and you create narrative and story, and you have to follow it. Right? So we see the moment is God, the moment is scripture, the moment is love, right? The moment is peace. The moment is always new, so it is a constant deliverer of grace, right? The moment always comes to you free and pure. And so this moment really is an encapsulation of everything, which is why we sit and try and calm the mind, right? To become aware of this moment, to cease the narratives of mind that take us into story, and which is the delusion, which is how Maya operates. When we head into that story, Maya makes us forget our true nature and then creates a story about what we really are and what really needs to be done, right? And so that is our trap. That is what we have to break out of. But the master's saying, even though to get out of that, we have to deny the reality of the material of the sense world. He says that that's not an actual denial because we come back to it. Once we understand our nature, then we can accept everything. Then we can know that everything is within us, right? That everything is actually the same. Everything is a thought. And so when you come to know that everything is a thought, that all of these images in your mind that you thought was the external world is really just Brahman in the form of, or we posit an external world, but not sure that it's there. But it's Brahman that has become all of these symbols, becomes all of these forms for us in our waking dream to experience, right? But we can only come to know that when we gather ourselves into the witness, right? And thereby end our confusion about our relationship with everything. We realize that we are not related to everything, that we are everything, and that we are not in the world, but the world is in us. Right? And so we come to this knowledge, and this is what he's working toward here as he's talking with this. You explain Om with a reference to Ah, U, only, Mahima. Ah, U, and mean creation, preservation, and destruction. Master, but I give the illustration of the sound of the gong, Tom, Tom. It is the merging of the Leela in the Nitya, right? I'm wondering why it's so hard to read, and I realize I took my glasses off. It is the merging of the Leela in the Nitya, the gross, the subtle, and the causal merge in the great cause. Waking, dream, and deep sleep merge in Turiya. The striking of the gong is like the falling of the heavy weight into a big ocean. Waves begin to rise. The relative rises from the absolute. The causal, the subtle, the gross bodies appear out of the great cause. From Turiya emerge the states of deep sleep, dream, and waking. These waves, arising from the great ocean, merge again into the great ocean. From the absolute to the relative, and from the relative to the absolute. Therefore, I give the illustration of a gong sound. I have clearly perceived all these things. It has been revealed to me that there exists an ocean of consciousness without limit. From it come all things of the relative plane, and in it they merge again. Millions of Brahmanandas rise in that Chit Akasha and merge in it again. All this has been revealed to me. I don't know how much about what your books say. It's a very interesting idea of Om, that this merging, this coming into being, remaining, and then going out of being, that this is the creation, preservation, and destruction. That is captured in this word Om, which is the vibration, the world of change, right? The very foundation vibration for this world of change is this Om. And he's saying here, that this to dig deeper into this idea of creation, preservation, and destruction. We see how these say how everything is coming out of the nitya, out of the absolute, right? Taking form, becoming relative, right? Becoming changing, and then again sinks back into the absolute, and that this is a continual process of things coming into being, going out of being, coming into being and going out of being. Mahima, those to whom such things were revealed did not write the scriptures. They were wrapped in their own experiences. When would they write? One needs a somewhat calculating mind in order to write. Others learned these things from the seers and wrote the books. Master, worldly people ask, why does one not get rid of attachment to woman and gold, to lust and greed? That attachment disappears after the realization of God. If a man once tastes the bliss of Brahman, then his mind no longer runs after the enjoyment of sense pleasures, or wealth, or name and fame. If the moth once sees the light, it no longer goes into the darkness. You see, this is a great promise right here that he's talking about. It's something I take great relief in, because this means that you don't have to resist with your gritted teeth all of your temptations and pleasures for the rest of your life. If you put your effort into discernment, these things fall away, right? It's like as long as we have this tenacious idea that there's something in the world to enjoy, that there's something in the world that we need or want that's going to make us happy, then renunciation is extremely difficult, if not impossible, right? And so it's not that we then have to force and push harder and grit our teeth harder, like, "Grr," right? That's not going to work. That's going to destroy destroy our mental peace, or is what that's going to do. But it's our discernment. If you watch your whole cycle of pleasure, whatever your vices are, if you watch the whole cycle from when that thought first arose to when it took its form, to the fall and to the circle and then the repeating of it again at another time, when you start taking that into account and reminding yourself of that, not trying to talk yourself into anything, not trying to convince yourself of anything, but trying to allow truth to be truth in the moment, to allow your true thinking to override your false thinking, right? And to understand, when these temptations come up or these suggestions come up from the mind that, hey, maybe you want to try this, or maybe you want to eat that, or maybe you want to do this, right? You discern. You're like, well, let's look at the last time that we did that. Obviously it didn't change me because here I am once again being asked to engage with the exact same thing all over again, right? So it obviously didn't give me anything. I didn't grow from it, right? It didn't make me happier. And furthermore, I've never been happy that I engaged in that activity, right? It's never made me happy that I did that. Afterwards, how do I always feel afterwards? You go through and remember what was the real fruit of that engagement, of that exercise? What was the real outcome? And accept that. Don't deny it and lie to yourself, right? That's what ignorance is. You can see what ignorance is so clearly when the mind, especially when you're in that state of you're discerning, you're learning, but you haven't quite accepted your results of discernment yet because you still want to hold on to the things that you want to engage in, right? And so you don't hold on to your discernment, you don't believe it, you don't accept it. No, you just keep going on that. There's not a lot you can do with that. This is a state of being for a while until the mind is purified, right? And so you have to keep discerning and you have to keep trying to listen to that discernment because the mind is going to try and pretend that you're just trying to make up something to make your point so that you can get your way, right? Or whatever it's thinking. But you have to hold fast and you have to believe your discernment. You have to look at it clearly and hold on to it and allow it to cancel out your action, right? The action that was going to be a karmic inducing action, right? And so you use your discernment and you stick with it to try and come to a place where you can renounce naturally. Where you renounce naturally means you let go of it. It falls out of your hand. It doesn't have to be dragged out of your hand, right? You don't have to sit there and try and shake it off while trying not to look at it. You just let go of it. It shouldn't be dramatic inside to renounce. It's a natural process when you are ripe, when it's time to renounce, when you have done your discernment, when you've done your studies of the scriptures, when you're drawing close to the Lord and you're beginning to find your contentment in the presence, then it's time to renounce, time to discern. It's always time to discern first and renounce as a result of your discernment, right? So that you can say no and let go and move on. And if you have believed your discernment, right, then you can literally let go of things and not be nagged by them. If you're nagged by the things you're trying to let go of, then understand you are not yet finished discerning because you're still trying to hold on to those things. You're still letting them come back. There's still a part of your mind that believes those things serve it somehow, right? Because if you say no, it does not arise again. There's no one in you to bring it up again. It's just the habit that's bringing it up again in there. And so that habit has to be purified, has to be washed out of the mind by constant discernment, constant remembering, so that you then begin to behave yourself in a natural way, a way that becomes true to yourself, because you think that you want the fruit of that vice. And there's a part of your mind that thinks that's how you're true to yourself by giving you what you want, right? And we've been doing that for how many lifetimes now, just giving ourselves constantly what we want and avoiding what we don't want, right? And so through discernment, we come to see that these things that we think that we want are not, we really don't actually want them. That what they represent, we want. The story that they tell, we want, right? Because all of those stories of our desires always describe God in some way or another. And so our desire for objects is because we've confused them with God. They present to us a memory of God, or they flash to us the thought of God, and we then associate that with the object, and then our desire grows for the object. But when we look through the object and realize that everything that's attractive about that object is attractive because it contains a name of God, that's discernment, right? That's when we sit down and discern and understand that our desires have not fed us. Our desires have not been true to us, that our desires have lied to us and left us stuck, right? Left us in a cycle of delusion. So when he says that that by accepting everything, he accepts all the scriptures and all the traditions, and so that kind of muddies things to some degree, right? He says, but then you have to boil them, right? And what is that boil them, right? That milk should be boiled. One should boil such milk over the fire a little while, and there will be no smell whatsoever. That means to digest it, right? To understand how and in what way are all the traditions one. In what way are they all going to take us to the same goal, to the same reality, right? How is that true? And so boiling is using your practice to make these things part of your part of your own self, ruminating on them so that these truths will drop out of the mind and drop root into the heart and actually begin to affect the way that you naturally act, not by effort, not by self-control, not by discipline, but by inspiration, right? By your relationship with that Satchitananda, with that divine spirit within you, right? Through the accepting of that grace, we find that inspiration that brings us peace. We find that inspiration that gives us strength and gives us the will to do the right thing and to leave behind the things that are not helpful. The master, worldly people ask, why does one not get rid of attachment to lust and greed? That attachment disappears after the realization of God. If a man once tastes the bliss of Brahman, then his mind no longer runs after the enjoyment of sense pleasures or wealth or name or fame. If the moth once sees the light, it no longer goes into the darkness. So this is where we're wanting to go through our practice, is come to a place where we can let go of all of these things, right? And the mind doesn't desire them because it has sussed out the true nature of these things. It has seen that nothing outside of myself can last. None of the things that I am given by things that come outside of myself, none of them remain. They always have to be refilled. Everything in this world has an expiration date. There is nothing that lasts forever, right? There is only that element, we'll call it an element, that thing in you which is unchanging. That alone is real, right? And through our discernment, we come to touch that and we find that the nature of that thing that is real is Satchitananda, pure being, pure intelligence, right? Pure love. And we find that that is the check to all desires, according to the Narada Bhakti Sutras, right? That self is all that we desire. That desiring that self, we are fooled into confusing it with objects external to us, fooled into thinking that it's things and places and peoples and whatnot that we desire. But it's our own self, the Lord herself, that we desire. And some friend said to Ravana, you have been assuming different forms for Sita. Why don't you go to her in the form of Rama? Ravana replied, when I contemplate Rama, even the position of Brahma appears insignificant to me, not to speak of the company of another man's wife. How could I take the form of Rama for such a purpose? All worship and spiritual discipline are directed to one end only. Ready? Here it comes. This is going to be a good one. All worship and all spiritual discipline are directed to one end alone, namely, to get rid of worldly attachment, right? To get rid of this idea that there's something outside of ourselves that will make us better. To get rid of the idea that there's something outside of ourselves that we can add to ourselves to become whole, right? All of our practice is to realize that there is nothing out there for you, which is a beautiful thing because you can rest. You can stop trying to find it and you can go within and enjoy it, right? You don't go within and look for it because it is you. It's the thing that is looking. So if you go looking for it within, you won't find it. What you do is you go within and you accept it. You open your heart to the idea of grace. You open your heart to the idea of a perfect love, a perfect wisdom, a divine presence, right? You go in and you accept that. And through that acceptance, you come to see that it was real, right? You come to know that it was real. Oh, I can see my little family of quail are running through the garden there. Cool. Right? So all worship and all spiritual discipline are directed to one end alone, namely to get rid of worldly attachment. The more you meditate on God, right? The more you do your practice, the less you will be attached to the trifling things of the world. Why? Because you're starting to get to talk in a goofy way, you get a bigger charge out of God, right? And the little charges you were getting from the world are now starting to pale in comparison. The ones in the world usually have more color, more flash to them initially, right? Because the thing is that the pleasure of God is a constant. It's not a flash in the pan like all the things in the world, where you have to have an action and a substance in order to have a pleasure. With God, the presence of God, which is always a constant, just has to be remembered. And then the bliss of your own divine nature flows through you. And the constancy, the steadiness of that bliss ultimately wins out over the flash of the changing, right? Over the flash of the changing. And so we begin to let go of these trifling things in the world. Trifling because they don't last, because they're temporary, they come and go. They cannot deliver on what they promise. They always take it back, right? So they're trifling things of the world. The more that you love the lotus feet of God, the less you will crave these things of the world or even pay attention to creature comforts, right? Because that atmosphere within you it can become, if it really depends on your sincerity and earnestness. You know, your inner peace, your inner love, your inner bliss can become so dominant that nothing in the world can reach through it, right? That's how you become that person of steady wisdom, right? You sit there in the constant company of the beloved, right? Enjoying and imbibing that bliss, that wisdom, that isness, right? And everything that's being done is being done through inspiration of your nature. There's nothing else for you. You will look on another man's wife as your mother and regard your own wife as the companion, as your companion in spiritual life. You will get rid of your bestial desires and acquire godly qualities, right? Because you're no longer serving a body. You're no longer serving a mind, right? Now you're serving the divine in everything. You will be totally unattached to the world. Though you may still have to live in the world, you will live as a Jivan Mukta, right? Someone who's been liberated while they were alive. The disciples of Sri Chaitanya lived as householders in a spirit of detachment. You may quote thousands of arguments from the Vedanta philosophy to a true lover of God and try to explain the world as a dream, but you cannot shake his devotion to God. In spite of all your efforts, he will come back to his devotion. right? Because the devotion is an indicator of truth, an indicator of presence. A man born with an element of Shiva becomes a jnani. His mind is always inclined to the feeling that the world is unreal and Brahman alone is real. But when a man is born with an element of Vishnu, he develops ecstatic love of God. That love can never be destroyed. It may wane a little now and then, but he indulges in philosophical reasoning, but it ultimately returns to him, increased 1,000-fold. Right? So this idea that this world is unreal is an important one because that's the truth of it, right? But what is unreal is not the world, but what you think of the world, what you think it is. That's what's unreal. That's what the illusion is, right? There is a screen behind the movie, but that screen has nothing to do with the movie. It's just there because it transports the movie. And so this world of constant change, right? There is a screen behind it. There is the divine reality behind it. And so we don't get involved in the story of the movie, right? We get involved with what is behind the movie. And then we appreciate the technology as such, right? We watch the movie from a different perspective then. We have a choice. We can forget the screen and get involved in the movie and laugh and cry and weep and scream, or we can choose to remember the screen and temper the effect of the movie on us by always knowing, hey, this really isn't real.
Swami, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, with the state of affairs in the world today. I live here in Santa Barbara in Summerland. It's a beautiful place. I'm looking out here, see some mountains, places I've hiked.
Hmm.
And I read the news, I stay up on it. And I've just been feeling heartbroken, watching it,
Hmm.
recognizing it to be a divine Leela, right? And the real being unreal and real being real, and the notion of Brahma and Advaita. However, I still feel heartbroken, and I still, to be frank, weep at what's going on, and in light of that. And so what's going on there? There's these various layers, but then, like, why is it such that one would become, I suppose, so enthralled in something? And what does that say about the nature of maybe karma, and and how to be at peace with traumatic happenings all around you? Like, there's wars all over the world right now. I don't
Hmm.
follow them, but I'm praying for peace and for satya, and Ananda, and all the good things that come with that. So what does one do? What would Ramakrishna say to do? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
What does the gospel tell you to do?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that this world is only troublesome to an ego because the ego is the one that interprets and gives value to all of the experience that it's having. But all of those experiences, anything that lays outside of us is neutral. It's neither good or bad until it meets us. And so we stay true to our nature, right? No matter where we are in the world, we stay true to our nature, and our nature is to love. So we are always responsible to express love. We're always responsible to express intelligence and doing it through our being, right? So in the moment, there is no narrative to the world. No narrative in the moment because nothing can happen in a moment. There's not enough room for a sentence in the moment. It's just isness. It is as it is. And the scriptures tell us that God is everywhere present and always perfect. So
So,
to a non-ego, the world is perfect.
so can I ask a follow-up question out of curiosity? So, for example, right, here I am living in Santa Barbara in California, albeit from New York. I have a lot of family in New York. New
Mhm.
York's it's pretty hard in a lot of places. I'm from Queens,
Mhm.
so I talk to my friends there, and they're having it rough. And then I wonder, well, what can I do about it? That is there even a prerogative there, a moral imperative, right? And then in reading the Gita and reflecting on the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna,
Mhm.
um, it's like, if you're doing this is my interpretation, and just totally tell me where I'm wrong. Imagine I am on about just about all of it. Is that, if you're doing your highest dharma and you're doing it with the purest integrity, say as Ram would, you don't really have any karma accruing because you're doing all that you can in every moment to pursue perfection. Kurksheksha, right, being the nature of the mind and the battlefield of the
Right.
present.
Well, your karma only stops when you cease seeing yourself as the doer.
So the question I'm getting to is, I feel immense compassion. So
Uh-huh.
sort of like I studied Buddhism, right? So that sort of bodhisattva thing, right? And
Hmm.
when I see people on TV and they're saying things and then they're doing things, and I'm weeping for the implications, if there is in fact a karmic order such that reincarnation would put them somewhere, that I would pray to the Lord that that never happened to them, because I wouldn't wish that upon an ant.
Hmm. Yeah, what you're watching on TV is not real. You're getting someone's story about something that they think is happening. You're not responsible for what's happening on the television. You're responsible for where the mother has put you, and you are responsible to what she has, to the level of power that she has given to you to change where she has put you.
So a better question is, I've experienced physical pain, right? Walking up the street barefoot.
Hmm.
I've been never violent, but I have been hit before.
Hmm.
And that hurt. That was like, it hurt and it was internalized, and I'm still dealing with it, processing the trauma, etc. It's like serving in a way. So if I can experience that myself, having felt it, I'd imagine that other people can perceive and feel too, if we exist in a physical material reality and life is real and live on a physical earth and planet.
We don't, but okay.
Right, I know. So like, what is one to do then to be their best selves as free agents that can assist and aid?
To be true to your nature in each moment.
Okay,
That's all.
cool.
No thought. You don't think about it. You don't make a plan. That's all egoism. That is the dream.
That's ego.
All right. Yeah. Any thought is ego.
Okay.
It's because of ego that the mind is disturbed and
Great,
may
thank
and
you.
therefore thinks. And so in the moment, to be without thought means to be fully aware of your divine nature
Hmm.
within. You're sitting in the shrine, absolutely absorbed in the atmosphere of that shrine, of absolute sacredness, and you be where you are. And if there's something to be done because of your absorption in the presence, you will do it. You will be inspired and you'll move to do it. Not because you're fixing something, not because you're changing something, not because you're correcting something, but because your nature is inspired to alleviate suffering.
So what happens if one has a job, right? And so say one's in the military. What
Mhm.
is your responsibility if you're in the military?
That's your dharma. Yeah. Your dharma is to obey your commander, right? And to go forward. But it should be the same thing no matter what, no matter where you are, that you have to be where you're at. It's a trick of Maya to get you concerned with what's happening in Israel and Iran on the other side of the planet because the mother has not given you one lick of ability to do anything about that. So she gets you all tied up in a karmic crunch of compassion pouring out and feeling sorry for these poor people out there. And that gives the ego a sense of goodness, gives this ego a sense, oh, I'm a good person because look, I'm crying. Look, I care. Look how deeply involved I am in these people. And yet the suffering in your own community, you're not even aware of because nobody's put that into a soundbite and handed it to you on a television.
Right.
So what they're saying, what Mother says, be where you are. I have given you a world that you can affect. The town you live in, the neighbors on your block, pets in the people's houses around you. Those are the people I have given you to take care of and to love. Those are the people you have power to do that for. Be present, be available to me. When I need you, I'll get you.
And so where do the tears go then that are cried out of compassion?
Let them go.
No, but
Well,
I mean, where, say someone like, I imagine, look, I think everything is one, and that's Brahman, right? Which is,
if everything is one, what are you crying over?
well, I'm not crying, where this is a philosophical discussion, really.
Right. Well, I don't like those
Okay, I'll stop
because they don't
then.
go anywhere. Right. Then we have to bring it